He put his hands on females, put his hands on producers, executives. That's just his. I guess that's what the whole name Bad Boy comes from. That people don't really understand. What is it? What is a bad boy? Why did he choose that name?
Nobody had this on their bingo card. Not the fans. Not the blogs. Not even the people who live for hip-hop chaos like it's a full-time job. Because when 50 Cent dropped that documentary, the internet braced for silence, lawyers, or carefully worded statements written by someone in a very expensive suit. What they did not expect was this. Instead of ducking, dodging, or disappearing, Diddy responded, and the response hit like a plot twist nobody saw coming. The kind that makes people rewind clips, reread posts, and ask, wait, did he really just say that? The energy shifted instantly. This stopped being a one-sided expose and turned into a full-blown chess match played in public. Fans weren't ready. Critics weren't prepared. Even people who don't follow hip-hop drama leaned in because this wasn't damage control. This felt deliberate, calculated, almost daring. Like someone saying, you think you know the story? Watch this. And that's what made it unsettling. Because when someone finally speaks after being poked, prodded, and publicly dissected, the response tells you everything about how seriously they're taking the moment. This wasn't defensive. It wasn't quiet. It wasn't predictable. It was bold enough to flip the narrative and loud. Enough to make everyone wonder what's coming next. Because when two giants stop throwing subs and start answering directly, the fallout isn't just noise. It's history. Being rewritten in real time. The moment the documentary hit, the internet did what it always does when it senses blood in the water. It circled. Clips were clipped, quotes were screenshot, and opinions were formed before the opening credits finished. Rolling. Everyone assumed the same ending. Silence. Lawyers. Carefully curated statements that say a lot without saying anything at all. That's the standard playbook when a public figure gets put under a microscope this bright. But this situation didn't follow the script, and that's where everything went sideways. For a while, it looked predictable. The documentary spread fast, each scene sparking debates that felt more like digital shouting matches than conversations. Fans dissected every frame like it was evidence in a trial. Critics lined up with think pieces ready to drop at the first sign of a response. And through it all, one question hovered over everything. Is he going to say anything? That question sat unanswered just long enough to make people comfortable. Too comfortable. Because in internet time, silence becomes a conclusion. People decided the response would never come, or if it did, it would be soft, delayed, and filtered through a legal team thicker than a phone book. The narrative started settling in place like wet cement. Then the response landed. Not quietly. Not carefully. And definitely not how anyone predicted. It didn't feel like a denial crafted to check boxes. It didn't feel like damage control meant to calm sponsors and reassure investors. It felt intentional, direct, almost confrontational in its calmness. The kind of response that doesn't rush to defend itself because it's not playing defense at all. That's when people realized this wasn't a reaction. It was a counterpunch. The tone alone threw fans off balance. There was no panic in it, no scrambling energy, no sense of someone trying to outrun a narrative. Instead, it felt like someone stepping forward and saying, "You want attention? Fine. Let's talk." That confidence rattled people more than anger ever could. The internet immediately split into camps. One side saw the response as bold, calculated, and oddly strategic. The other side read it as arrogant, dismissive, and fuel for an already raging fire. Both sides agreed on one thing, though. This wasn't expected. Comment sections exploded with confusion. People rewound clips, reread posts, and argued over subtext like it was a foreign language exam. Every word was analyzed. Every pause was interpreted. Even the timing itself became suspicious. Why now? Why this way? Why not earlier? That's when the speculation machine kicked into overdrive. Some people believed the response was planned from the beginning, waiting for the right moment to flip the script. Others thought it was a reaction born from irritation, finally deciding enough was enough. And then there were those who believed this was just the opening move, not the full response. A teaser, a warning shot. What made it even messier was who the response was aimed at. This wasn't some random critic or anonymous voice online. This was directed at someone known for never backing down, never letting a feud cool off, and never missing an opportunity to stir the pot. That alone raised the stakes, because responding to a documentary is one thing. Responding to someone who thrives on escalation is another. The power dynamics shifted instantly. What had felt like a one-sided narrative suddenly had friction.
Tension
Entered the story in a new way. Fans who were comfortably settled into their opinions now had to reassess. Even critics paused, unsure how to frame the next chapter. And then came the sarcasm from the audience. Because when the internet doesn't know how to process something, it jokes. People compared the situation to a chess match where the quiet player suddenly flips the board. Others joked that this response made reality TV reunions look polite. Some even said it felt like watching a villain calmly explain their plan halfway through a movie. But beneath the humor was unease. Because confident responses in moments like this don't usually come without intention. They signal that the person speaking believes they have leverage. Whether that leverage is information, strategy, or sheer audacity was still unclear. But it was enough to make people uncomfortable. The documentary, which had dominated the conversation for days, suddenly wasn't the only focus anymore. The response became the story. Headlines shifted. Reaction videos scrambled to update their takes. Creators who had already recorded their opinions had to re-record because the narrative had changed mid-sentence. And this is where the tension really started to build. Because when someone responds in a way that doesn't align with expectations, it forces everyone else to adjust. Allies get nervous, opponents get louder. Neutral observers lean closer. The calm before the storm disappears, replaced by that electric feeling that something bigger is coming. People began asking new questions. Was this a bluff? A setup? The start of a longer campaign to discredit the documentary itself? Or was it simply someone refusing to play the role everyone assigned them? Whatever the answer, one thing became clear. This wasn't going to end quietly. The response didn't close the door on the controversy. It cracked it open wider. It invited scrutiny. It challenged assumptions. And it dared the internet to keep pushing, because when someone finally speaks, after being put on blast, the words matter less than the message behind them. And the message here was loud without being shouted. This wasn't an apology. It wasn't a retreat. It was a signal. And once that signal went out, the entire conversation shifted from, what did the documentary say? To, what does this response mean? That's when everyone realized they weren't watching the end of a scandal. They were watching the beginning of something far messier. Once the response landed, the internet did what it does best when expectations get shattered. It panicked, recalculated, and then went completely feral. The documentary was supposed to be the final word, the mic drop, the moment everyone referenced for months. Instead, it became the opening act to a messier, louder, and far more unpredictable showdown. The spotlight shifted overnight, and suddenly the question wasn't what was in the documentary anymore. It was what this response unlocked. Memes flooded timelines within minutes, because humor is the internet's emergency exit. But these weren't casual jokes. They were sharp, confused, and slightly nervous. Like laughter in a movie theater right before the villain explains their plan. People joked about chessboards being flipped, about plot armor activating, about how this response made every previous hot take age like milk. The humor landed because nobody actually knew how to process what just happened. Reaction channels scrambled. Creators who had confidently declared the documentary checkmate were suddenly backtracking in real time. Videos got updated, titles changed, thumbnails went from smug certainty to wide-eyed disbelief. You could almost hear the collective keyboard smashing as everyone rushed to reframe their narrative before the comments ate them alive. Celebrity reactions poured in. But not directly. Nobody wanted to pick a side out loud. Instead, vague posts started popping up everywhere. Quotes about truth being subjective, stories about patience and timing, tweets about letting the noise pass. Nobody named names, but everyone knew exactly what the subtweets were about. When that many indirect reactions show up at once, it's a sign the situation has officially entered industry conversation territory. The public outrage didn't disappear. It mutated. Some fans doubled down, accusing the response of being dismissive and calculated. Others flipped sides, suddenly questioning the documentary's framing. The audience fractured into camps, each convinced the other was missing something obvious. The comments stopped being discussions and turned into debates. Fueled by certainty instead of evidence, pop culture comparisons went wild. People said this felt like a season finale twist that forced a surprise renewal. Others compared it to a courtroom drama where the defendant calmly drops a piece of evidence the prosecution forgot existed. Someone joked that this response made the documentary feel like a trailer instead of the main event. The exaggeration wasn't just comedy. It was the internet trying to regain footing after the ground shifted. The wildest part was how fast speculation took over. People weren't just reacting to what was said. They were reacting to what wasn't. The pauses, the wording, the timing. Everything became a clue. Armchair analysts dissected sentences like they were encrypted messages. Every phrase got 10 different interpretations, each one more dramatic than the last. Then came the conspiracy theories. Some believed the response was planned months in advance, waiting for the perfect moment to drop. Others claimed it was bait, meant to provoke a bigger reaction. A few insisted this was just the first move in a longer campaign that hadn't revealed itself yet. The lack of clarity made everything feel bigger, heavier, and far more dangerous than a simple back and forth. The documentary's creators were suddenly under scrutiny too. People revisited scenes, questioning tone and intent. Critics asked whether context had been selectively framed. Supporters pushed back, accusing doubters of falling for misdirection. The narrative wasn't just challenged. It was destabilized. And when a story loses its footing, everyone involved feels it. Meanwhile, the audience did what audiences always do. They kept watching. Even the people who claimed they were tired of the drama couldn't look away. Engagement skyrocketed. Comment sections hit war zone levels. Live streams dissected every angle, every rumor, every potential next move. The internet wasn't consuming the story anymore. It was living inside it. What really escalated things was the tone of the response itself. It didn't seek sympathy. It didn't ask for understanding. It didn't beg for patience. It stood firm, almost daring critics to keep swinging. That confidence made people uneasy because confidence in moments like this usually comes from belief, not desperation. Fans started asking uncomfortable questions. Was the documentary incomplete? Was the response misleading? Was the truth somewhere in the middle, buried under layers of ego, history, and bad blood? The more questions surfaced, the harder it became to land on a clean conclusion. And that's when the outrage shifted into anticipation. People stopped reacting emotionally and started waiting strategically, waiting for the next statement. Waiting. FOR receipts. Waiting for a counter-response that would either confirm suspicions or blow everything up again. The silence between updates became just as loud as the updates themselves. The situation stopped, feeling like a scandal, and started feeling like a standoff. Two forces, both confident, both unmoving, daring the other to blink first. That tension is addictive. It pulls people in deeper because unresolved conflict feels unfinished. And unfinished stories demand attention. By the end of this phase, the internet had fully accepted one thing. This wasn't a one-off moment. This wasn't going to wrap up neatly with a single response or a final clip. The documentary had opened a door, and the response had kicked it wider. Whatever came next wasn't just going to be commentary. It was going to be fallout. When the volume finally dipped, it didn't mean resolution. It meant the narrative had solidified. The internet didn't move on so much as it locked in a new default setting. The documentary was no longer the uncontested centerpiece. The response had changed the frame, and frames are everything. Once the frame shifts, every detail that follows gets interpreted differently, whether it deserves to or not. Public perception split and then calcified. Some people saw the response as strategic confidence, the posture of someone who believes the truth doesn't need to shout. Others read it as deflection wrapped in composure, a calm mask hiding something bigger. What mattered wasn't which side was right. What mattered was that the audience stopped waiting for answers and started choosing beliefs. And once beliefs settle in, evidence becomes optional. Reputations don't collapse all at once. They bend, quietly, the kind of bend that doesn't snap headlines but changes how people talk when the cameras aren't rolling. Industry whispers followed. Not dramatic calls for cancellation, but recalculations, pauses, delays. Let's see how this plays out. In the entertainment world, that phrase is code for uncertainty. And uncertainty is poison to momentum. Relationships took collateral damage too. Allies went careful. Critics got louder. Neutral parties disappeared altogether. When controversy becomes unpredictable, people don't rush to defend. They step back and protect their own optics. That silence gets misread as betrayal, which only deepens the divide and feeds the cycle. The internet's tone shifted from outrage to surveillance. People weren't yelling as much. They were watching. Every move became a data point. Every post was dissected for subtext. Every silence was treated like strategy. That kind of scrutiny is relentless because it never announces itself. It just waits, collecting moments until it decides it has enough. The most uncomfortable part was how the story refused to close. There was no definitive mic drop. No clean rebuttal that ended debate. Just layers, claims, counterclaims, implications. The audience was left holding ambiguity. And ambiguity makes people restless. Restless audiences look for patterns. Patterns turn into narratives. Narratives harden into reputations. And here's the twist nobody likes to admit. Both sides fed the machine. The documentary sparked it. The response supercharged it. The internet did the rest. Everyone involved became a character in a story that no longer belonged to them. Once that happens, intention matters less than interpretation. And interpretation belongs to the loudest crowd. The fallout also redefined power. Not in a courtroom sense, but in the court of public attention. Power shifted from whoever spoke last to whoever controlled the pacing. Long gaps felt ominous. Short replies felt calculated. The rhythm itself became a message, and people started reading into cadence like it was choreography. Fans who once treated this like entertainment started sounding tired. Not bored tired. The kind of fatigue that comes from watching unresolved conflict spin without end. Fatigue doesn't cancel people, it erodes interest. And erosion is slow, quiet, and devastating. The story's legacy won't be measured by views or trends. It will be remembered as the moment when a response changed the stakes. When a supposed conclusion turned into an opening. When confidence, instead of calming the storm, rewrote it. What happens next is the real cliffhanger. Not another post, not another clip. But whether this becomes a turning point or a template, a lesson learned or a playbook repeated. Because once a response proves it can flip the narrative, everyone watching takes notes. And that's the danger. Not the drama itself, but the precedent. The idea that silence isn't safety and speaking isn't closure. That every move reshapes the battlefield, even when it's meant to steady it. The internet will keep watching. Not because it wants peace, but because unresolved power struggles don't fade. They simmer. And simmering stories don't end. They wait. The question isn't who won this round. The question is what this response unlocked, and whether anyone involved can close that door again. Once it's been kicked this wide open. Alright, now let's be real. If you made it this far, you didn't just watch a video. You watched the internet get flipped on its head in real time. This wasn't a quiet response. This wasn't damage control. This was a move that changed the entire board. And if that didn't catch your attention, check your WI-V and smash that like button like it owes you money, because the algorithm needs to know this breakdown mattered. Drop a comment and tell me what you think really happened. Did this response flip the narrative, or did it just pour gasoline on a fire that was already out of control? No safe answers. No PR takes. Say it with your chest. If you're not subscribed yet, you're playing yourself. Fix that immediately. Hit subscribe like you're locking in front row seats to the mess. Because this channel doesn't wait for headlines to cool off when scandals start shaking the industry. We're already here pulling the blueprint apart piece by piece. Turn on notifications so you don't get caught asking, wait, when did this happen? While the timeline is already in meltdown mode. 1 minute it's silence, the next minute the narrative flips. And you'll want to be early, not catching up through screenshots. And don't get it twisted, this story isn't done. Not even close. Power plays don't end with one response. They escalate, they mutate, and they come back louder when nobody expects it. When the next move drops, you'll want to remember you were already tapped in. So stay sharp, stay curious, and stay ready. Because this is Fame Blueprint, where narratives get exposed, power moves get decoded,